So today we're going to have a little bit of a look at a pro swing with our resident coach here, Lewis Sparrow.
Good morning.
Scottie Scheffler, world #1, killing everyone out there. What is it about his swing that works for him, and what can you learn about it?
Yeah. So I think with Scottie's swing, there's so many aspects of it which we actually see quite a lot in normal lessons, but the footwork is like the most common part people want to learn about. And it's quite amazing how his footwork is perfect for him, and it really helps him balance the weight of the shaft really well. So we've got it up on the screen now, so we're going to do a little bit of an analysis. I'm going to get you to get on the mat and see if you can emulate it as best as you can. And this is not so much that you should try and do what Scottie does, but it's like we've all got our own swing DNA. Like you've got yours, I've got mine, Luke's got his. It's basically what he does with his swing to balance some aspects which could cause some problems. And that's essentially the idea. So what I find really interesting is he gets into a backswing position where when we go up to the top, if we pause him at the top, we can see a couple of things which are quite standout. One, there's not a whole ton of rotation to the lower half, so it's not like he gets this right hip really deep and really far around him. And there's also a fair bit of pressure through the front of the back foot. So he's not actually making a super deep turn with his lower half during the backswing. And also from a face-on perspective, and this is really, really common, is that as he gets to the top, his sternum, the middle of his chest, is actually closer to target than his lower half.
Because that actually surprises me quite a bit. You'd expect with the amount of turn his upper body has, I'd have expected a bit more hip turn than that.
Yeah, I mean, he's an athlete, super flexible. You know, they all have these quite incredible training regimes now, don't they, as well, like flexibility, mobility, all that good stuff. So, yeah, I mean, he turns his upper half really, really nicely.
And the arm height's incredible, isn't it?
It's so common that when you see people that make a shorter lower half rotation and a sternum that starts to get more left at the top, we do usually see quite high arms. It's quite common. So what I find really interesting in particular is that we see that a lot. However, the normal 25 handicapper would look so different on the way down because, you know, they all see the stuff out there about turning more through the ball and getting into your left side. Imagine if we could just give him more rotation into his lead side from that spot. So if he pulled his left shoulder back, left hip back, you can imagine that the hand path would work way more out in front of him.
Yep.
So turning early in his transition would actually be detrimental to his swing plane. This is where it gets super interesting, where the bump across and that famous footwork starts to get his pelvis more under his chest again.
Yeah, and that's much more of what I would see as a lateral move.
Yeah, exactly. So lateral movement will help shallow a shaft.
Yeah.
So for example, someone that hooks the ball might have excessive lateral and they need to learn to rotate. Exactly. Yeah, we've all been there. So it's basically, it's always the matchup, right? So if you've got like Victor Hovland who gets really across the line at the top, if he moved too sideways, he would get so underneath plane, hit a big hook. But he's a fade bias player and has tons of turn in transition. So it helps him get the club back in front again. So it's all these kind of idiosyncrasies that start to match up.
So you saying that, I think what that highlights to me is that we all will look at Scottie swing, Rory swing, Hovland swing, and we're all going, right, what can we learn from them? And actually what we can learn from them is they work for them.
Yep, big time. And even with the best players in the world, and they're just so good at creating the right path, controlling face angle, controlling strike. They all do it differently, and I think that's just such a big thing for anybody to learn.
But currently, no one as well as him.
I mean, he's pretty good. Didn't he hold 14 out of 14 putts inside 10 feet at the weekend?
I don't know. I know this year he had a bet with his caddy that he would, it was about how many wedge shots he'd hold all year. And I remember at the Players' Championship, he was always on something like 4 or 5 in April or whenever it was, April, May, April, and March even, March, April. It's early in the year, I can't remember dates now. But and the caddy was joking with him because he knew he was going to win the bet because he'd already holed out many more than they expected to by that stage.
Ridiculous, ridiculous. He's freakishly good. It'll be fun to see what he does next year and see if he keeps it going forwards. So, long story short, I think the real key part is as we get halfway down and he's shifted across and shifted towards target, like you mentioned. I know it's a bit blurry, but he gets the club in such a good pre-delivery position that yes, he tips towards target. Yes, he's got this crazy footwork. But where it really starts to matter, so kind of around knee high, pre and post strike, he is flawless. Absolutely flawless. So I think, again, it's just the matchups in this golf swing are absolutely fantastic. So there, I mean, yes, he might look a little bit more cramped, and that's maybe due to the sideways rather than the rotational creating space.
Less space, yeah.
But I think, and we were talking about this before we came on, he gets in such a neutral spot where what I've seen of Scottie, he's so able to hit little fades, little draws, straight ones. You know, he's so workable, and he doesn't have a huge bias. And if he didn't work his feet like he does, he would possibly be more fade bias and strictly fade bias. Interesting. Should we get you in some spots?
Try.
Okay, so we're going to go through backswing first. So if you want to get into a setup which feels comfortable, and it is important to note that Simon is so different to what Scottie does, whereas
I'm not very good.
Well, being modest. Yeah. So during the backswing, imagine if you made a backswing where you could get your shoulders up towards 90 degrees, but you don't turn your lower half. Think about how difficult and how flexible you'd have to be to do that.
Need to be a lot younger.
Yeah, it does help, does help. Yeah. So if you make a backswing up, I'm going to hold your pelvis a little bit more still. That's it, good. How far do you reckon you could get if you keep your pelvis there? Exactly, yeah. So there's two things he does.
Without just doing my arms, that's about me.
That's probably as far as you can get. So you do this very different where you get really well and you get really good into that right hip. You get the weight a bit more back in that right foot. But because he's so far forward in his weight in that right foot, the right hip really stays quite passive during the backswing. That causes, I'm going to move you around a little bit, Simon, that causes the chest to get a little bit overextended and get a little towards target. Now this is what I meant by a 25 handicapper would turn into their lead side, and look how over the top that club head came there. Yeah? So they end up with this big slice.
Yeah. For me, that's the only way I can go from there.
Yeah. Again, because you work your lower half in a very, very different way. You're more rotational, he's more lateral, of course. So if you make that backswing where the chest is closer to your target. That's it, yeah, good. So we're going to put you a little bit further. So what you have to do from here is use more lateral force. So you're going to push through the ground in this direction, Simon, with your right foot, which will cause the pelvis to thrust more towards target. But now, if we looked at this from down the line, which we'll do in a second, this shaft is perfectly on plane, But you're so used to turning, whereas he has to go here and then move more across to get this club in this good delivery position. And again, the path is neutral, he can hit fades or draws, and he's so good with his hands and so creative that it actually gets quite kind of repeatable in both ways. So he utilises more sideways force, more lateral force, whereas you're a big rotary force, more toe heel. But I think as soon as you go up to that old backswing again, come up again one more time for me. I think as soon as you get here, and you see lots of high handicappers turn because it's what they see online and what they should do, but really it causes the club to get so far outside in.
Alexander Noren.
Exactly, exactly. So it just causes this complete kind of cascade reaction. So the lower half is just balancing the pitch of the shaft. So now we're going to see the down the line view and really show the difference between lateral force and rotational force and how it balances the shaft out. So if you could set that backswing again for me. Good, so chest is ahead of pelvis. Now, again, high handicappers have this rotation, and look how the mass of the golf club has been kicked quite heavily outside. So naturally from there, it's going to swing more outside, inside through the ball. So driver becomes really difficult to hit. We see a lot of curve left to right in the ball flight. Get into that backswing again for me. Now what Scottie does really well is he gets in the same backswing. He should be steeper, but he uses that kind of push off of his trail side to get the shaft such a good delivery. And I think that's just a key part to know. From here through strike is the most important aspect. And I think when you look at all these different swings, you can rest there for me. When you look at all these different swings, through strike, where the head is and where the face is, they're all quite similar.
Yeah.
But the body movements that create the kick out of the shaft or the lowering of the shaft are all so different. And again, it's often based off ball flight. Are they more of a one-dimensional ball flight, hit the same curve over and over again? Or like Scottie, so creative that getting himself in that kind of neutral spot is actually great because there's not a huge adjustment whether he wants to hit a little fade or a little drawn or hit it straight.
As we were mentioning earlier about how many wedge shots he'd hold, but that neutral position, he's got so minimal toe rotation for the club face through the ball that his distance control, flight control, his short game, which, you know, so, and for most of the pros games, the focus is on their long game. Like they're focusing on at Albany this weekend, just gone, the tee shot down the 18th, how good he was with water left and trouble right to just hit the fairway every single time. But actually, it's what allows him to be so good with the wedges.
I also think, so this happens so often where you get that kind of high teen or early 20 handicap coming upstairs. They get into a spot like this, they don't know how to handle it, so they're terrible off the tee, but invariably, 8 times out of 10, they're all like, oh, my short game's pretty good though. And I try explaining. Exactly. It's like sternum's left, chest is more ahead of the pelvis. It's great for short game. But in terms of creating speed and certainly delivering a little bit of upstrike with the driver, it's so difficult to do that from here. You have to eventually get there, which obviously he does.
Exactly.
Which he does it so well. And obviously if he hits, God knows how many balls every day, you can groove anything. But for the weekend golfer, maybe getting into a backswing which just gives you that spine angle to start off with would be a bit easier to manage at the weekend.
So I hope you enjoyed the insights into Mr. Scheffler's game and swing. I think there are some really key takeaways for everyone on this.
Yeah, I think it's so easy to, there's so much information online at the minute, but it's always the case of finding your own DNA. Regardless of your level, there is always your own swing, and there'll be parts of your swing which you might look at and go, oh, I need to change that. For example, most coaches might want to change Scottie's footwork, but actually it really helps him. And sometimes when people want to get rid of early extension, again, it's a way of helping them balance the shafting and get the shaft a little bit more shallow on the way down. So just be careful with what you change. Some things might not look great, but they might serve a real key purpose.
So essentially, understand what works for you, and once you know that and why it works for you, then you can pick and choose the bits that are relevant to you that the top players are doing.
Yeah, exactly.
So I hope you've enjoyed this video. We'll no doubt do a series of them through the year, through kind of particular tournaments, particular players. If you like them, let us know and we can add to it and add to these videos and do a series of them. But I hope it's been fun. We will be doing a follow-up with Scottie's equipment that we're going to have a look at and a bit of a dive into why he has that set up and what it achieves. So have a look at that video once you've had a look at this one. That'll be out shortly as well. But have a great off-season. I hope you get set up really well for the start of the next year. And like, subscribe, hit the bell button. See you again soon.
See you soon.